My daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "Dorothy, you are not entitled to his future." I looked down at my hands. I said, "I heard you." Then I stood up and walked out. They thought that was the end. It was not even close to the beginning. My name is Dorothy Calloway. Most people call me Dot. I am 64 years old, and I live in Harlan, Tennessee, and I am telling you this story not because I want your sympathy. I am telling you because maybe you are sitting somewhere right now, holding something you do not know what to do with next. And I need you to know there is always a next step. If that sounds like you, go ahead and subscribe before we keep going. I will be here when you get back, but to understand why that envelope changed everything, I have to take you back 34 years. Have you ever given your whole life to something and not stopped to ask whether it was giving anything back? Before Gerald, I had a life that fit right here in my hands. I learned to sew from my mother, sitting beside her at the kitchen table on Saturday mornings with fabric scraps and a patience she passed down without ever naming it. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I was working at a small alteration shop in town, and I was good at it. Not bragging, just the truth. Gerald told me I did not need to work after we got married. He said it gently, the way men did back then, like he was giving me something. I took it that way. I was 29, and I thought that was what love looked like. For 34 years, I woke up at 5:30 every morning, made the coffee, set out his breakfast before he walked out the door, kept a handwritten ledger the whole time, every dollar in and out, written in my own hand in a green notebook I still have somewhere. Gerald handled the bank accounts, signed the tax forms, but I was the one who knew where every cent actually went. He just never thought to ask. My sewing machine sat in the garage for most of those years. Sometimes, I would walk out there for no real reason, lift the lid, look at it, then close it and go back inside. I never let myself ask why I kept doing that. Gerald used to say I was better at running a home than I ever was at sewing. He meant it as a compliment. I believed him for a long time. That is the part that gets me now, not that he said it, but that I let it stick. His mother, Ruth, ran a little alteration shop on Main Street for as long as anyone in Harlan could remember. Ruth was the only person in that whole family who looked at me like I was a full person, not just a role someone needed filled. She passed in 2019. Gerald told me she had not left anything significant behind. He handled all the paperwork, the way he always did, and I signed whatever he put in front of me. I trusted him. That was the only reason I needed, and I thought that was enough. Did you ever sign something without reading it because you trusted the person handing it to you? It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. Gerald set his phone on the kitchen counter and walked down the hall, and I was standing right there when the screen lit up. The name said D. Whitmore. I did not pick it up. I only read what was already on the screen. Have you told her yet? We cannot keep going like this. I set my dish towel on the counter, walked to the back door, went outside, and sat in the yard until it was fully dark. I do not remember what I thought about out there. I remember the sound of crickets, the way the porch light made a small yellow circle on the grass. That is all. 3 weeks later, Gerald sat down across from me at the kitchen table and told me he wanted a divorce. He had already hired a lawyer. I found that out in the same conversation. He had already spoken to Marcus, our son, before he said a single word to me. I called Marcus that same evening. He told me his father had been unhappy for a long time and that I need to respect that. He said it like he had practiced it. Maybe he had. A few days after that, we gathered at Marcus and Cheryl's house, all of us in the living room, like some kind of meeting. Cheryl is my daughter-in-law. She has always been the kind of woman who knows exactly what she wants and goes straight at it. She looked at me and said, "Dorothy, you have had a good life here. 34 years is a long time. But at some point you have to accept that you are not entitled to his future." Gerald said nothing. He just sat there and let those words stand in the room. I looked down at my own hands for a moment. Then I said, I heard you. I stood up, picked up my purse, and walked out to my car. I did not cry until I was 3 blocks away, stopped at a red light, completely alone. That part I kept to myself for a long time. When someone tells you that you are not entitled to the life you helped build, what do you do with that? The room at the Route 9 Budget Inn cost $47 a night. Carpet the color of old mustard that smelled faintly of mildew no matter how long I left the window cracked. A mini fridge in the corner that hummed so loud I thought something was broken. That was just how it ran. I had $14,000 in a savings account I had opened 6 years earlier at a branch across town. Gerald had said once early on that a wife did not need her own account. I never forgot the way that landed. I could not have explained why I opened that account when I did. I just knew I needed to. $14,000 sounds like something until you are 64 with no employment history for 34 years and no clear picture of what comes next. One evening, I sat on the edge of that bed with my laptop open and pulled up job listings. Every single one asked for work experience from the last 10 years. I found the experience field on one form and typed 34 years managing household finances, childcare, and family logistics. I sat there and read it back to myself. Then I deleted it. I knew exactly how a hiring manager would read that line. I closed the laptop, looked out the window. The room faced Main Street at an angle, and from where I sat I could see the corner building where Ruth had run her shop for decades. The old sign was still up there. Ruth's Alterations, windows dark and filmed with dust. I sat watching it for a while, not thinking anything particular, just watching it stand there like it was waiting for something. Looking back now, I think some part of me already knew. I just was not ready to say it yet. The next morning, I called Hank Odom. I cannot fully explain why. I remembered that he had been at Ruth's funeral, standing near the back, and that at some point during the service, he had looked at me in a way that made me think he wanted to say something. He never did. I had thought about that look once or twice over the years. I told him I was going through a divorce. There was a pause, longer than a normal pause. He asked quietly whether anyone had ever gone over the estate paperwork with me after Ruth passed. I said no. Gerald had told me there was nothing significant to go over. Hank was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" His office was small and plain, the kind of place that has been the same for 30 years and does not apologize for it. He set a folder on the desks and opened it without any introduction. Ruth had executed a living trust in March of 2011, 8 years before she died, properly notarized. Filed with the county recorder's office the following month. The trust named the property at 14 Main Street, all equipment and fixtures inside, with me as the sole beneficiary. Dorothy Ann Calloway, not Gerald, not the estate. Me. That property had never been part of our marital assets. It had belonged to me since the day Ruth signed her name. Gerald had known. He had handled the estate paperwork himself. He had looked me in the eye and told me there was nothing significant. Hank turned to the last page. There was a short handwritten note, clipped to the back, notarized separately. Ruth's handwriting was small and even. She had written, "Gerald takes. He always has. Dorothy stays. She always does. This is the least I can do." I read it once, then again. My hand stayed still in my lap, but my eyes filled and I did not try to stop them. Ruth had known for years. She had done the only quiet, careful thing she could think to do about it. I never got to tell her it was enough. What would you have done, sitting in that chair, reading those words? I drove back to the motel and called Evelyn. She has been my closest friend for 40 years. She listens all the way to the end before she says a single word. I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Dot, let Hank handle this before Gerald finds out." That was all. It was exactly right. I met with Hank 2 more times over the following weeks. Went to the county recorder's office myself and asked to see the deed. My name was on it, clear as anything. I opened a new bank account at a different branch. Nothing connected to Gerald. I did each thing quietly, one at a time. One afternoon, I drove to Main Street and let myself into the shop with the key Hank had given me. The air inside was stale, dust on every flat surface, light coming through the dirty front windows sideways and pale, like it was apologizing for itself. It smelled like old fabric and machine oil, a smell I had not breathed in a very long time. Ruth's sewing machine was in the back corner, covered with a cotton cloth. I walked over and put my hand on top of it. I did not lift the cloth. I just stood there with my hand resting on it. I told myself I did not know what I was feeling. But that was not quite true. It felt like recognizing something I put away so long ago, I had nearly forgotten its shape. Around that same time, Gerald's attorney contacted Hank about Ruth's estate. The divorce settlement required all assets to be accounted for. Hank confirmed a trust existed. He said the details would be addressed at the probate hearing. Nothing more. Then Marcus called. Thursday afternoon, I was folding laundry in the motel room when his name came up on the screen. His voice was not angry, but it was not steady either. It had that quality of someone who has been told what to say and is trying to remember the order of it. I told him to speak with Hank directly. There was a pause. Then his voice got quieter, like he had stepped out of the room he had been performing in. He told me Cheryl wanted him to go after the building. Said she felt it should belong to the family. I asked him, "Which family, Marcus?" I did not say it loud. I did not say it mean. Then I ended the call and set the phone face down on the bed. So, a few days later, Evelyn told me something she had been sitting on for a while. Marcus had gotten into trouble with online gambling during the pandemic, built up slow before it got serious. Cheryl knew. She had not helped him get clear of it. She held onto that knowledge and used it. Every time Marcus needed to make a decision, Cheryl was already standing at the door of it. I sat with that for a long time. I want to be honest, because it was not simple. I understood why Marcus made the choices he made, and understanding it did not make it hurt less. Both of those things were true at the same time, and neither one canceled the other out. I did not bring it to Hank. It was not mine to use. It was just a sad thing I now knew about my son. That evening I called Hank. I asked him if he was ready. He said he was. The hearing was set for Wednesday morning. I chose the blue blazer I had sewn myself more than 20 years ago. The only piece of clothing I had taken when I left the house. It still fit. The room at the courthouse was smaller than I expected. A long table, a judge at the front, a clerk to his left. Hank was already there when I arrived. I sat down beside him, and that was when I saw the three of them across the room. Gerald, Marcus. Gerald looked older, his hair grayer, his shoulders forward in a way I did not recognize. Marcus was staring at the table. Cheryl was dressed carefully, the way a person dresses when they want to be taken seriously. Hank stood and read the trust aloud. No performance in his voice. He stated the property address. The date Ruth signed, March 2011. The date it was recorded, April 2011. The name of the sole beneficiary, Dorothy Ann Calloway. Then he sat down. Gerald's attorney raised a question about Ruth's mental state at the time of signing. Hank set two documents on the table without standing up. The first was Ruth's routine medical evaluation from early 2011. No signs of cognitive decline. The second was a notarized affidavit from two independent witnesses who were present the day Ruth signed. Gerald's attorney looked at both and did not file anything further. The judge said the trust was valid and properly recorded. He said the property belonged to Dorothy Calloway, and there was no legal basis for contest. He said it the way judges say things, plainly, without feeling. I was not thinking about winning when he spoke. I was thinking about Ruth sitting in some attorney's office in 2011 and deciding to do something quiet and lasting for a woman she loved. That was what I kept coming back to. When people began gathering their things, I stood and picked up my purse. I walked past Gerald on my way out. He did not look up. Marcus started to form a word. I heard the beginning of it, but Cheryl touched his arm and moved him toward the other door. I walked outside. The air was cold, and the sun was already bright over the parking lot. Evelyn was standing on the steps with her coat buttoned and her hands in her pockets. She looked at me and asked if I was okay. I told her I thought I actually was. First time I had meant that in a very long time. In the weeks after, Gerald's attorney had to redo the divorce settlement math. Gerald had been counting that Main Street property as part of the total picture. When the court confirmed it had never been a marital asset, his calculation fell apart. The final settlement was adjusted. I received a fair share of what we had actually built together. That is not revenge. It is arithmetic done right. A few months later, Evelyn mentioned, quietly, that Marcus and Cheryl had tried to refinance their house. The bank ran a full credit check. The gambling debts came up. The refinance was denied. I listened and did not say anything when she finished. I am not going to tell you I felt nothing, but I am also not going to say I felt good. I just let it go. Carla, my younger daughter, had stayed quiet through all of it. I understood that even when it hurt. A few weeks after the hearing, she sent me a text, said she was sorry she had not been there, asked if we could talk. I sat with it for a day. Then I wrote back one word, yes. Evelyn and I cleaned the shop ourselves over 3 weeks, pulled dust cloths off the furniture, hauled boxes to the curb, scrubbed the old floor on our hands and knees until it looked like itself again. We washed every window twice. We talked while we worked, and we were also quiet, the way you can be with someone you have known for 40 years. I had Ruth's sewing machine serviced by a man named Earl, who has been fixing old machines in this county since before I was married. He said it just needed cleaning and a new belt. I bought 2 more secondhand machines from an estate sale and set them along the side wall. Painted the walls myself, warm off-white. Took my time. I did not change the shop sign. I only asked the sign painter to add 1 small line underneath. Ruth's alterations, established 1978, reopened 2024. The first week, 3 customers came in. Second week, 7. A neighbor named Pat stopped in and asked, a little shyly, if I would ever teach her to sew, said. She just wanted to fix her own things, stop throwing clothes away over a broken zipper. I said yes. That yes became a Saturday morning class I have held every week since. No fee, no sign-up, no agenda. Any woman who wants to come can come. Some weeks 4, some weeks 9. We just work. Carla drove up from Nashville in October. We sat in the shop with coffee and fabric on the table, between us and light coming through the clean front windows. She said she was ashamed of how long she stayed quiet. I told her I knew. We did not fix everything that afternoon, but we started. Marcus sent a text in December. I read it, set the phone down, went back to the seam I was finishing. I am not close to him. I want to be honest about that. But I have learned the difference between keeping a door open and leaving a wound open, and I am done confusing one for the other. I am 64 years old. I have a shop on Main Street with my mother-in-law's name still on the sign. I have 2 good machines and one that is nearly 100 years old and still runs. I have Evelyn. I have my hands. I have Saturday mornings full of women learning to fix things. If you have ever been told you are past your time, I need you to hear this. You are not. Tell me in the comments, what is something you set down years ago that you are finally thinking about picking back up? I read every single one. And if this story reached you, please subscribe. There are more stories coming, and I think you are going to want to hear them.